Good morning or good afternoon, wherever you are. My name is Roland Thomas. I'm a naturopath. To me, that means following the path of nature. It doesn't mean dispenser of supplements or pharmaceutical, etc. I love very much to eat, and I recommend a good diet of many plants, exercise, lots of rest, lots of sunshine, deep breathing, and a good lifestyle. But today I'm going to present to you a expediting solution. Over the next hour or so that we're going to spend together, I'm going to be going through many slides. I'm going to use slides or images to convey many words instead of narrating. These images will be in your memory. You'll have access to this video again, I suppose, and you'll be able to review, and these images will become clear as I bring them up and as I maybe speak about them at some time. I'm going to be speaking about an advanced nutritional support or advanced nutritionals in support of brain health particularly. Certain foods have an ability and efficiency at reaching the brain more than others. Today we're going to look at probably likely the most efficient food on earth in terms of its ability to reach and impact positively, nutritionally, energy-wise impact the wellness or the health of the brain. Before we go there, I want to remind us that there's a health crisis in America. Most people die of those leading top 6 diseases: heart condition, cardiovascular problem, cancers and stroke, upper respiratory disease, lung cancer certainly, but other respiratory diseases. Alzheimer has lately, in the last 3 or 5 years, surpassed for the first time death from over diabetes. And it is yet to increase. We are expecting that there will be as many as 20% of the baby boomer population affected by this horrific condition. This chart, statistic gathered by the CDC and the National Institute of Health in the United States, clearly shows that that the major preventable cause of these deaths lies with obesity, certainly smoking in the case of lung cancer, but obesity, overweight, and then comes after that, if we can tie in alcohol, infectious disease. Really, if you're obese, will impact you a lot more dramatically than if you're fit. Toxin as well, and certainly drug abuse and even supplement abuse. Yet, what do people do? We know that the cause of these conditions is weight or improper diet. People eat too much salt, too much sugar, certainly, too much bad fat, chips and junk food. And yet, when they're 40 years old and they start to have chronic fatigue or pre-diabetic or arthritis or, God forbid, some cancers or other conditions, people tend to want to find solution in a bottle. And particularly the pharmaceutical and even the supplements tend to be alike. In other words, allopathic. People will look for a supplement for chronic fatigue, another supplement for diabetes, or supplements for not getting a cold, and so forth. There's a tendency to take a pill for every ailment, which is to the symptom rather than the cause. People are not looking at the cause. It's very important to remember that if we would literally choose to eat a lot more plants and fruits from the start, that we would likely solve this health crisis in America by 80%. That is known. It's a fact that if we chose to eat, as recommended even by the Cancer Society, lots of colorful fruits and vegetables on a daily basis, we would greatly reduce this crisis in America. Today I'm here to speak to you about an exceptional, expedient solution, which is in the realm of the diet. It is not a diet, it is a complement that can be added to the diet. I met Dr. Michael Kiriak, a PhD in cellular biology, a former Soviet Union research scientist that was selected by the Academy of Science of Russia when he graduated in biology. He had been pursuing algae research and was asked and was tasked to continue his research. And he was funded and he was allowed to begin working a field trial with small farms, with local farms. They certainly were able to do lab tests, and over the next 15 years, gradually, the research became larger and larger due to the success that they were getting early on with the small tests. They were able to look at literally thousands of algae over the next 8 years or so, and work with 20 species of animal, most of them being mammals. And eventually these research led to very large trials. I hope that by now you have read the quote by Dr. Kiriak. I have written a book about his life, about this story of research called Awakening the Genius Within. I invite you to get the book, even online. You can read it at awakeningthegeniuswithin.com. Get the DVD, which has actual clips of Dr. Kiriak and his research. Behind the Iron Curtain in Russia, these were actually secret research. It is likely the largest research in natural or even in a solution to health in a natural spectrum that I know of to this date. After about 8 years of research, having successfully proven that they were able to find solution to increase health and prevent many conditions, many diseases, and their goal was to actually eradicate cancers, which was of epidemic nature in the many livestock species in that western part of Russia. And these problems came as a result of Russia gathering all the small farm onto these very large farm, as we do in America. And then with that you get problems of hygiene, you get problems of low productivity and cancers of all sorts. So Russia allowed to look not only at pharmaceutical solutions like antibiotics or growth hormones, but also, if you recall, they would allow any research, Kirlian photography, for example. And Dr. Kiriak had been given the task to look at these algae as a solution. He was assigned in 1984, where they were able to build a very large research facility on a poultry farm, a 1 million poultry farm. And you see the main facility in the center was a bioreactor, advanced technology, already back in 1984, where they were able to grow different kinds of algae. On this farm, in the first years coming, they were able to stop the decline in productivity that you can see on the diagram there in the red arrow, and show a 20% increase in productivity in the first year. This productivity was evaluated, if you wish, or calculated mostly in economic factors with extraordinary results. First of all, there was an eradication or stopping of the chronic Marek cancer, including returning the healed animal to production, to laying eggs again. There were many benefits, and I hope that you're reading this list of benefits, and I may pick on a few. There was able to reduce the amount of food by 2 truckloads of alfalfa, which was a prize nutrition supplement in the poultry industry. 2 truckloads per day. Imagine, every day of the year for 365 days a year, by adding, as you can see on the image on the top right, Dr. Keriak is showing on national television. In 1986, he was nominated Person of the Year in his country for the advance in research for the success that he had obtained. He was showing that with including this jar of algae to the feed of the million chicken on a daily basis, that they were able to save 2 truckloads of alfalfa every day of the year. Imagine the equation. This small jar of algae equals 2 truckloads of alfalfa. So I'll help you to understand this over the next minutes that we have together. But there's an extraordinary result, including increased survival of newborn chick by 80%. Chicken were able to lay eggs 24 months instead of 16 or 17 due to the fact that there was no more osteoporosis. Chicken lose their calcium to the eggshell, if they're forced to lay eggs every day, then that becomes a big issue, and after in their half-life, they're hardly able to support their weight and they're slaughtered, in other words. I hope by now you've read some of the many of the benefits. On the bottom right of the chart, you'll see that this research was done again in Montreal, Canada in 1997 after Dr. Keriak had immigrated to Canada. He was trying to show agriculture of Canada. This is a formal research facility at the Montreal McGill University. The results that he had obtained in Russia. And you can see on the diagram that they were able to show an increase in amino acids or protein in the egg by 20%, a decrease in the bad fat by 100% in the 4th generation, an immediate 1st generation increase in survival rate of the newborn chick by 80% again, and as well that they were able to reduce I think it's 70% infectious diseases or conditions, incidents, even after removing antibiotic. In another large trial in Russia, Dr. Keriak established a research facility around a 15,000 head dairy cow herd, which was impacted by various cancers, low productivity, and many problems. In adding 1 gram per day of the blend of algae that they had developed to date, they were able to remove 1.5 pounds or so, 5,000 grams of feed on a daily basis, and yet get about 1 gallon and some more milk per day per cow, 365 days a year. So in other words, adding 1 gram of food delivers 5,000 grams more milk and 5,000 grams less feed. Imagine this equation. How could this be achieved? Look at, again, here a list of benefits that was tracked and proven on this large farm. You'll find that many are similar to the poultry. There was reduced in the feed. There was increase in milk productivity or milk amount, better fat in the milk, more protein in the milk, increased fertility in the male, certainly the cancers were eliminated. There was elimination of mad cow disease. Again here, no osteoporosis. Again, dairy cow, by giving milk, by being forced to lactate every day, also lose their calcium due to inefficient feed, of course, but inefficient assimilation, absorption, and utilization of the calcium, and it is found in their stool or urines. Yet, when consuming this 1 gram of the blend of algae on a daily basis, there's no more osteoporosis. The cows here again are able to lactate over 40% of what they were before. In other words, after 5 years, typically production cows like this are slaughtered because they can hardly maintain their standing due to their weight, and their bone structure is weak. Here again on the right side, Dr. Keriak is shown with Alain Forget on a farm in Canada, where he was in association with Agriculture Canada, was able to demonstrate the benefit of including this 1 gram of algae per day for each cow. And you see here a summary of the research after 36 months. It shows an increase in milk amount of about 30% more milk by including this 1 gram of algae to the lot. An increase in protein by 8.6% in the milk, and an increase in fat by 9.3%. Those are major quality factor in that industry. This is a case in the US, in Ohio, where a herd of bighorn sheep were declining rapidly due to Johne's disease. It's basically an infectious disease that ruins the animal intestine. And this farm was asked, the owner of the farm, Mary Mason, was asked to euthanize the herd about 7 years ago, at the time that I met her. And she chose to not do so and to give about 1 gram of algae per day to each of the bighorn sheep. These are sheep. And lo and behold, 7 years later, the herd has survived and thrived, and as a matter of fact has done better than ever before. And some of the things that were noticeable by her immediately within the first year or so was the size of the horn of the young sheep that showed to be at barely 1 year old, larger than those in the past of a 2 and 3 year old. I visited this farm the summer before and met several of these sheep, including the 2 that you're seeing there. This is a picture from that visit. Okay, we've talked about animal quite a bit, but how is it supposed to help me help human, right? That's the next question. First thing to remember is that most of the species tested were mammals, and if the mammals are getting such results, I assure you I'm happy to volunteer. I'm a mammal too. You saw the benefits in the area of hormonal fertility, osteoporosis, blood sugar issue, preventions of cancer, more energy, more productivity, and many. There were literally, if you were to tabulate the benefits per species, hundreds of different benefits. So there's something there that's different than medicine. In other words, there wasn't an algae for each ailment of each species. There's something, and really what we're talking about is the cellular level. Next, so I want to talk about humans, of course. In 1986, after the Chernobyl disaster, Dr. Kiriak was allowed to use the product, the algae, on many hundreds of children and some adults that were severely impacted by radiation ills, many of them scheduled, basically given to hospices to die. And he was able to conduct informal tests, as his mandate had always been to work with animals, and obtain extraordinary resounding results in many cases. And many of the people that they were able to feed the algae to are alive today. Several of them are alive today due to the algae. What was observed quickly was a diminution of the leukemia, or a normalization of the white blood cell count, from a degeneration of the liver, pancreas, and bone marrow to regeneration of the bone marrow, of the spinal fluid, the blood, very visibly. Under a microscope, you could see a regeneration of the blood, the liver, and so forth. There were many other improvements observed. Over the next, now here what I'm showing is that when he came to America, intending to also attempt to work with human and with the government of Canada, as he had always worked for government, he led a small clinical research at a Quebec City hospital school or research facility on oncology and endocrinology. There they tested 3 variants of the bioalgae, shown by the 3 series of columns, and showed that in red that they were able to stabilize the leukemia in Petri dish. This is a clinical trial to some degree, which would be below the black dotted line there. And it also showed that one formula was more efficient than the others, and which is called the formula 3. It also showed that in the small red box at the top left, that a smaller amount, in this case 0.14 milligram per liter of saline water applied in drop to the Petri dish, applied frequently throughout the day, different periods, was more efficient than a larger amount at 1.4 milligram per liter, given in one time, in one dose, in other words. This showed that smaller is better if it's applied more frequently. We're talking about cellular nutrition here, not medication. So feeding frequently, not necessarily a large amount, is a very efficient way to use this product, but also, as you can imagine, it applies to our way of eating as well. Next, I want to help you understand how can such a small capsule, imagine, you see a picture there, but literally it is very, very small. How can such a small capsule, a few capsules per day, can deliver such extraordinary results in so many species? It's hard to comprehend. It's unfathomable. It's nearly unfathomable. So I want to show you some images to help you understand how that happened, how that can happen. I'm going to proceed fairly rapidly. You're all very smart people, very intelligent, but the images are very helpful to help. Let me get a sip of water here. Dr. Kiriak researched algae. Algae were not born yesterday, I assure you. At the bottom of this chart, you'll see that 3.5 billion years ago, at 3.5 there on the bottom left, that the cyanobacteria became the first living organism on Earth ever, after several billion years of nothingness. The life was born on Earth, and was prolific at the time. It literally started to cover all water. All the oceans were covered with this green algae. Very few species at the time. About a billion and a half years later, multi-cell organisms began to evolve, even small toads and amoeba, and eventually animal life in the water, particularly. And then about another 1.5 billion years later, plant life evolved on the planet, and the planet became covered with jungles, and many species came and left since, as you know, the dinosaurs, for example. Many species came and were extinct, yet the cyanobacteria has remained to this day the #1 surviving species of life on Earth. We humans came around just a few years ago, right? 15,000 years or so. So we are very new. Yet there are many, there are literally possibly a million different types of algae on Earth. Some of them, particularly the one researched by Dr. Kiriak, are the most prolific energy producer and are the most nutrient-dense food on Earth. Yet we're talking about microscopic algae, not the kelp and the sea vegetables, or even the phytoplankton. We are talking about the smallest of algae, invisible to the naked eye. Yet one single dot of food contains more nutrients than any other food on Earth. Here's an aspect of food that I want you to pay attention to. We think of food in terms of tasting good or pleasure or medicine even. But in reality, the most important aspect of food is energy. All energy on Earth comes from the sun, from nowhere else. No sun, no life on Earth. Yet, about 50% of the energy given to the planet by the sun is lost immediately. It's reflected back in the atmosphere, as you can see on the bottom right there. So we're left with half the energy potential per meter square. And yet, about 99% of this energy is dissipated in the ground and ocean. And of the remaining 1.8 watts per meter square, plants grow. And in the process of growing, and plants grow and make energy. It is the only way that we get energies from plants initially. Yet in the process of growing, lose another 50% of the energy of that 1.28 watts left over, as you can see on the de-escalating value. So plants are the major producer, the only producer of energy from the light. And you'll see that singled out are algae here and cyanobacteria, that initial first ever cellular organism on Earth. I have singled them out as well in green to remind you that we're talking about algae. And as you can see, the consumers of these plants will also lose a very large portion of that energy. Over 75% of the energy is lost right away as you consume plants. And worse, a carnivore eating a plant eater, such as a gazelle, will also lose I believe it is another 75% of the whatever remainder of energy is in that food, in the animal. And tertiary consumers, such as an owl consuming, say, a fox, a large owl consuming a fox, which is a meat eater, will be constantly hunting because there's not a lot of energy left in a meat eater. As you can see, there's a loss of energy here, down to 0.01 watt per meter square. Anyway, the point of the chart is that food is about energy, not medicine, and that singled out as most efficient producer are cyanobacteria. Literally, cyanobacteria is the only plant that can produce without losing energy of the 1.28 watts, but more importantly, the only plant that when consumed, you can get as much as 100% of the energy potential in that small microscopic algae. There is no burden, no loss of your energy in consuming this algae. So I wanted to point this out to set the stage. Dr. Kiriak, looking at thousands of algae amongst as many as 1 million potential on Earth, certainly he looked at the large algae, the macroalgae like kelp and so forth, but they were ruled out quickly for the benefit of the microalgae. And eventually, after the first 8 or so years, selected 4 very specific algae, and that are quite popular, quite known as the most efficient algae on Earth at this time, nutritional algae for animal or for human. They are namely spirulina and Dunaliella and Hematococcus. There are 2 strains of spirulina that he selected, as you can see on the bottom left, amongst hundreds of different spirulina. They were selected for complementary reason. Let me show you a little bit, bring some clarity to this. You can see here the 4 algae at the top. There's 2 columns in green are the 2 green algae, and the 2 columns on the right are the more like orange and red algae. But I want to make a point here with this chart that the green algae are extraordinarily dense and wonderful food, full of protein, lots of minerals and vitamins and so forth. But one lacune or one item missing in green algae is vitamin C. Very low vitamin C apport. If you look it up, blue-green algae or chlorella or spirulina, And that's a problem because we humans require vitamin C in proportion with our meals, or present in our body to assimilate the rich mineral that are in the green algae. You can see with the thumbs up at the bottom left that this effect, this positive assimilation, was brought by bringing in another algae, the Dunaliella, on the orange-looking algae, which has a very high amount of vitamin C, which is lacking in the spirulina. And so this complementary, this balance and synergy was brought in those 8 or 9 years of research. Very, very important to note that the 2 red algae were brought in as well for extraordinary amount of chlorophyll, but also of carotenoid, I should say. You can see on the bottom right, singled out are the 6.6 to 9% carotenoid content and the 13 to 15% on the hematococcus, to the very low amount of red pigments in the green algae. So there's a lot more to this chart. There's a lot more, if you wish, growing algae and blending algae. It can be an art, but it's also a science. Another note here of interest is that we now know that certain algae, and certainly those in this product, in this blend, contain as many as 15,000 nutrients, and many more to be identified or discovered. So imagine that in a microscopic invisible dot, there's over 15,000 nutrients. It's hard to conceive, to understand, frankly. So we talked about algae as being, the way that I describe it, most likely the best food on earth, right? So question is, should we eat algae? Maybe we should eat only algae every day. Well, frankly, we don't recommend that. We certainly do understand that a person could live on it with water. We have never done years and years of research on that, but many people have done fasts with algae, as I do frequently, not long duration, just 1 day or 3 days. I find them very cleansing, very pleasant, actually. But I want to help you understand this phenomena that this small amount of food can cause such benefit. Here is a very known quote by Nikola Tesla. If you want to find the secret of the universe, think in terms of energy, frequency, and vibration. And if we just put in the word nutrition there, the same thing applies. Nutrition is not so much about medicine or this or that, vitamin or mineral. It's about energy in the end. And so next I want to help you understand how Dr. Kiriak's highly nutritious blend of a few algae brings about, first, chiefly assimilation catalyst. Itself is assimilated at 100% and travels the entire body and has a potential to feed cells and is welcome in every cell. But more importantly, we're going to talk about its ability to reach the brain. The most important critical cells to feed are the cells of the hypothalamus of the brain, the pituitary gland and the hypothalamus, which govern all metabolism of wellness, of health in our body, after all. So if we could find a way to feed particularly that region, we can bypass and help the body restore many ailments, many progressive and chronic ailment in our life. The 4 algae selected were selected, yes, for their nutritious, complementary, for balance and synergy reasons, but also the 2 red algae that you can see, one on the left and one on the right, were brought in to address a broader spectrum of colors, of pigments, a rainbow of colors, if you wish. There are dozens of carotenoids, which the likes of lycopene and lutein, beta-carotene, alpha-carotene, beta-carotene like the orange of carrots, right? Lycopene, for example, is found in tomato. Well, the Cancer Society tells us to eat a lot of colorful food and berries and so forth to address and to find some of these nutrients in our diet. Here you have a massive amount in a very small capsule. These pigments, we now know that they're much more than antioxidant. They are really energy transfer facilitator. Many nutrients are in our diet, in our food, to facilitate what we need to do. What we understand about food is we need to bring proteins, fats, and sugars, right? That's what we live on. Those are the gross nutrients on our daily diet. We need energy from sugar and protein and some mineral, of course, and fat to build new cells. We're building billions of new cells every day. The other thousands of nutrients and vitamins and phytonutrients are there to serve this process. And particularly the carotenoids are now known to be companion to chlorophyll. They serve in the same role. They are shaped similarly. As you can see here, they are shaped, elongated shape, molecular wise. We're talking chemistry here. But they're described as antenna pigment, and that not only do they help the plant capture the light, but they also help the consumer pass the food to the mitochondria, to the inner sanctum of our cell. I'm showing here in a small white box at the bottom that vitamin C, for example, does not have the same shape and is not as efficient. Certainly as an antioxidant is not as efficient either, but vitamin C has a lot of more roles than an antioxidant. Here I'm showing the ability of these elongated pigments or molecules to cross cellular membrane, to span across cellular membrane. We're seeing in the red here the astaxanthin molecule. And if you look at the vitamin C at the top of the cellular membrane here, will not span across, will often not penetrate the cell as easily as these facilitator, including chlorophyll. We're talking about shepherds of light, if I can use this poetic description. And particularly the blend of algae that we're talking about now has an ability to also cross the blood-brain barrier and the blood-retinal barrier, which are protection, as you know, of critical areas of our brain that the body has evolved to, where there are tight cellular intelligence, tight cellular membrane, but also at some point there's no more blood vessel. We're talking about small capillaries reaching the retina, and even no more blood vessel, including the upper part of the hypothalamus of the brain, where nutrients will go in through these deeper areas to the cells that make up the upper part of the hypothalamus, or the retina through diffusion, through osmosis, through pressure. So for that to happen, there has to be ability to cross the membranes and to be pure and to be complete. So the best nutrition on earth, bioalgae, has an ability to reach the brain, particularly the hypothalamus. So in summary, we have these four algae blended together to increase their uptake to a perfect food, complementary value. It remains a whole food. Ability to cross cellular membrane to reach the brain and facilitate energy transfer, bringing the sugar, the proteins, the carbs to the mitochondria, which occurs thousands of times per cell in our body, in our cells. We have on average 2,000 mitochondria, where the Krebs cycle manufactures ATP energy, right? So we bring in sugar, proteins, and fat, and this extraordinary chemical transformation to fabricate energy. That is the purpose, that is the name of the game in nutrition. So here's a more poetic or an image of what we're talking about. I described this, we're going to travel the energy light, highway of sunlight highway to the confine, to the inner sanctum of the mitochondria in the cells of our body. We have 100 trillion cells, on average 2,000 of these little engines that we need to feed. And the best nutrition is to bring about the energy transfer, which are the chlorophylls and these colorful pigments, as part of our diet. So here's an image, a chemical image of the hypothalamus at the top there. And you can see the importance of this organ. Hypothalamus literally regulates every single movement, your breath, your respiration, the temperature in your body, all hormones of the body, in 24 hours a day, in billions of interactions throughout the day. I'm showing here as well, for your benefit, a partial list of the hormone, but there literally are 100 more, and there are sub-hormones, and every enzymes, even proteins, are considered hormone when we do protein synthesis, for example. Notice at the bottom that vitamin D is listed. Vitamin D is a hormone. So the bioalgae has the ability to reach the brain, and we can see here black and white and a more colorful energy at the brain. The difference, if you read some of the terms there, you'll find that when there is more energy at the brain, when you can cross the blood-brain barrier, when you can feed the brain, you'll have plasticity, you'll have increased blood flow, you'll have anti-inflammation, you'll have synaptogenesis, you'll have neuron genesis, you'll have faster brain speed, of course, more memory. As a matter of fact, you'll be happier, you'll have less anxiety, less depression, and so forth. Bioalgae has an ability to reach the brain and cause these types of effect, which was observed with the 20 animal species tested. Here I'm showing a global picture of the relationship of the brain to the various organs and to the various glands. Unbeknownst to some of you, by the way, the heart is a gland, so is the kidney, so are the kidneys, so is the pancreas, so is the liver. For example, here, if we look at the kidney, the fabrication, kidneys have different roles, but one of which is to synthesize vitamin D, supercharge the final product, vitamin D, upon a message, a stimulation from the brain and the parathyroid hormone. So we can pick on this metabolism to show, in other words, to summarize the effect of consuming the bioalgae. Consuming the bioalgae on a regular basis increases brain health. If you can increase brain health, the rest of the body is a no-brainer. And so we have a better total body health. In the case of vitamin D here, we have a choice. We can, if we become deficient in vitamin D, we can jump on the pill. That's pretty much the message for the last 6 or 5 years. While we have never heard of vitamin D prior to that in terms of being a supplement often recommended or quickly recommended. I don't recommend it. I don't believe we should take it. I'm not here to tell you what to do necessarily, but you can see on the right that if you can find a way to increase brain health, that brain health will impose to the various process that it ends up being vitamin D. By the way, the skin, stimulation of the skin, the energy of the skin to synthesize from the light, the precursor to vitamin D will be better. The capacity of the liver to stock the vitamin D, precursor vitamin D, and the capacity, the energy of the kidney to synthesize the final product will be more efficient. I invite you to review this chart when you have a minute. Here we show that in all mammal tested, there was an increase in spermatozoid count by 400%, in the energy of the spermatozoid also by 400%, and the duration of life of the spermatozoid by 400%. I have drawn you can see the body of the spermatozoid cell is made up of mitochondria, which is role is to aspire sugar from the semen and to run towards the egg, right? That's the role of the specialized cell. You can see the relationship of the brain to increasing energy. Nice picture. I've shown you a lot of picture and there's a lot of message being passed, but I want to show you next some of the benefit that many of our clients, many of my clients I've seen over the years, and including a little bit, I'll tell you a little bit about myself next. Doogie, I met several years ago, but I met his mom 7 years ago at a conference in Chicago. She had bought some product and came back on the Sunday. Unbeknownst to us, she had given a capsule to Doogie on Friday night, and she came back on Sunday with tears of joy to give us a hug, to thank us because her son had buttoned his shirt for the first time in his life at 5 years old. He knew how, but he's an autistic boy, and it required coaxing and hand-holding all the time. And so also she noticed that he was a little bit more social in the park on the Saturday morning. Today he attends a normal class. He's doing much better than he would have normally done. He says a lot more words, he's more social, he's very pleasant, he's not freaking out, if I can use the expression, all the time. He's calmer. Another example here showing, for example, muscle mass, protein synthesis. Dr. Craig Oster is a 20-year survivor, ALS. He's a fighter. He has survived through good diet, through supplements of sort, to continuous exercise on a daily basis. When I met him about a year ago, he was, as you can see on the left, and by introducing the bioalgae in his diet, he was able to gain muscle mass. And he was exercising every day before because he wants to preserve his body mass. To the picture on the right that you can see, he also quickly observed or experimented or noticed, excuse me, I had some water here, more energy and better sleep and other benefits of sort. Danielle was an addict as well as diagnosed with HIV 14 years ago when I met him. He decided to change his life. He's a psychologist. Upon the advice of a physician in Denver, whom recommended dietary change and exercise and fitness and so forth. He took it on and he started to take the algae, and lo and behold, he was quickly became asymptomatic. He was able to not take drugs for HIV. He was able to maintain a good energy, and today he is planning on living to be over 100 years old without medication and living a fairly normal life. He's currently is a social worker in the penal system in California. Here we have Robin, who was devastated by Lyme's years ago now, and followed by, she was bitten several times by a brown recluse spider, which there are many in Colorado where she lives. She was bedridden, her life was miserable, she had no energy, and she started to consume the algae, and a few weeks into it, felt more energized, got up, became more social, and today lives a normal life, even though often Lyme is present, but it's called the Lyme load, or the viral load remains low when you can maintain your vitality, thereby increasing brain health, which regulates first the metabolism of energy itself. Fabrication of energy is done in cooperation with the brain and the Krebs cycle within the cells of the body. It's a relationship. It's about coherence. It's a partnership. And when I met Dr. Kiriak 20 years ago, this was my regimen. I was taking 25 different products. I had started in 1980 with vitamin E. As a result of a severe back problem, I had subluxation at L5. I could no longer run, could no longer carry boxes for my wife, could barely hold my children when they were born, couldn't play tennis anymore. I had a tendonitis, and I had begun to gain weight. I was weighing about 45 pounds over when I met him and taking all those supplements, which I had evolved these supplements over the years by studying, by reading articles, and these were state-of-the-art at the time, in 1998 and so forth. Had I continued to take supplements, I would, as you know, probably would have introduced resveratrol, which became very famous for a while. Vitamin D now is like, wow, if you don't take vitamin D, you're dead. And I chose to, well, I didn't choose to. After meeting Dr. Kiriak, he gave me a sample of this product, and it didn't tell me to stop anything. I wasn't at all committed to stopping the supplements that I was taking. But I tried the algae. And over the next, well, let me show you what I did. Over the next few days, I started to feel more energy. I was able to sit on my chair after a week or two for hours and hours. In the first 6 months, I started running, I started jogging, I started brisk walking. I finished a half marathon in that first 6 months. I subsequently completed a full marathon 6 months later, and then ran 4 marathons the next year. And I've been running marathon fairly regularly. I ran my last marathon a few years back in Montreal with my daughter, which had been a goal of mine since I was 18 years old, and that I had given up on. I had given up on due to my back problem, my weight issue, my tendonitis. So since 2000, I don't take any supplements whatsoever. So consuming Bioage has given me this extraordinary benefit. Besides the fact that I don't have back pain, back problem, I have boundless energy. I'm up from early morning to late at night. I attend conferences. I'm on my feet all day. As you know, I run marathon. I have better focus, clarity, better memory. I have shed the weight. By the way, I've lost about 35 pounds. There's another little 10 pounds there that I play with. It's such a simplification. I invite you to try it. I invite you to explore the book, to read the book that I'm sharing with you at awakeningthegeniuswithin.com. There's an accompanying DVD. If you want to see the product more closely, you can visit at bioage.com, a commercial version of the product, even more advanced than it was when in Russia, with advanced technology, called the Biosuperfood. It is a product that is Health Canada certified. Dr. Kiriak is likely the leading world authority on the use of algae for human and animal health, but he's also a quality assurance dedicated person, having worked for large government, for the Academy of Science, as a director of the nutritional science for the Ministry of Agriculture. He had responsibility for quality, for hygiene, and so forth. So he has kept those commitment, this knowledge that these are very critical factors in the success of the food. And so in light of that, he has applied and obtained Health Canada certification, which was a long process, an expensive process, in the manufacturing and the content and the standardization of the algae and of the 4 algae within one capsule. This is high technology, but he has demonstrated that each capsule, which has 4 different algae in it, are standard. In other words, each capsule has the equal value as the next one, to the 98% plus. And so I thank you very much. Again, thank you very much, and I invite you to visit and try the product, and then we're there to answer your question. And have a very nice day or evening wherever you are. Thank you.